Hey there, welcome to the Movie Review Mom YouTube channel. If this is the first time you've discovered it, yay, you're here, finally. I've been waiting for you. And if you're a returning subscriber, yay, thank you so much for coming back. Like, subscribe, you know the drill. It helps my channel to grow. And if you are new, then let me give you the scoop. My goal is to give you the heads up on filmmaking quality and content so you can decide whether or not you want to spend time or money or both sometimes watching a particular film. So the particular film that I'm reviewing today is called Reagan, this inspirational drama about the 40th president of the United States of America is now playing in theaters. It's rated PG-13. It's 2 hours and 21 minutes long, which is pretty long. But my overall movie review mom grade is an A-. I'm going to explain why. I'll give you an overview in a nutshell, and then I'll point out things I liked, things I didn't like. I'll offer tips for parents, themes worth talking about, funny lines, interesting lines, and we'll finish up with recommendations for other films that are sort of similar that you might also really like. But before we do that, let me share today's sponsored featured product, which is actually a documentary about Ronald Reagan. You can find it on Amazon Prime. Click on the link down below and it'll give you that link to take you directly to it so you can read more about it and decide if you want to watch it. So it is an affiliate link. It doesn't cost you any more money to rent it or purchase it, but Amazon will send me a few pretty pennies to thank me for telling you about it. It's actually very good. I thought it was well done. All right, but now onto this movie. In a nutshell, Ronald Reagan was one of the rare politicians, in my opinion, that was well respected from both sides of the political aisle. Unfortunately, liberal film critics today are having a really hard time seeing the good in this film due to their own political bias. And we're seeing that also in another movie that just came out, Am I a Racist? Now, I haven't done my review of that, but I did see it. And I actually heard Matt Walsh say liberal film critics are not even reviewing that film because they hate him so much. Anyway, I wanted to say good things about this film. It's not a Christian film. However, conservatives, of course, have been embracing this because Ronald Reagan discussed his faith several times in the film and, of course, in real life. The film was directed by Sean McNamara and written by Howard Klausner. Now, quick tips for parents. I think most kids are going to be bored. This is long before their time, unless they're older or teenagers and they're just interested in politics or history. It is family friendly, just so you know, but there's a lot of adults talking about politics. There is alcohol and some cigarettes shown. A man gets shot. We see someone at a funeral. There's portrayal of kid and adult bullying, talk of communism, and talk of Alzheimer's. Some of the themes that are illustrated very well are politics, communism, freedom, Reaganomics, economy, which was Reaganomics at the time, actors, Hollywood, marriage, ambition, supporting others, and the power of words and freedom. So the list of things that I liked about this film is pretty long. It starts off with Dennis Quaid. He actually was hesitant to play the legendary Ronald Reagan. Those are very big shoes to fill, but I thought he did a really good job. And there are even many times during the film where you'll be impressed with how much he looks like Ronald Reagan. Dennis Quaid just turned 70 years old when the movie was released, and Ronald Reagan turned 70 years old a month after becoming president of the United States. So it's a really good lineup in terms of age. Fun fact number one, Dennis Quaid also played US President Bill Clinton in the movie The Special Relationship in 2010. Penelope Ann Miller and Eloisa Huggins, who play mother and daughter in the film, are actually mother and daughter in real life. I always love that when that happens. The entire cast really does a great job and includes Mina Subari, Jon Voight, C. Thomas Howell, Leslie Ann Down, Kevin Sorbo, who shows up in a lot of Christian movies lately, Oleg Krupa, David Henry, and Robert Davi. During the production of the film, they had a COVID outbreak among the crew. That always slows things down. And I just had COVID, and it took 3 weeks for me to be able to start feeling normal again. My husband was recovered in a week, or less really than a week, and it took me forever. But anyway, Fun fact number 2, the movie was shot in several cities in Oklahoma. The Oklahoma City Capitol building was used as the United States Capitol building, and the Temple of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in Guthrie, Oklahoma, was transformed to be the White House. So that's fun. Pat Boone is represented in one of the scenes in the movie, and he actually appears in the scene as Reverend George Otis, which I think is really sweet. Of course, young kids won't even know who Pat Boone was, but he was a very beloved public figure and reverend. The movie does a wonderful job at illustrating the real-life deep romance Ronald and Nancy Reagan had during their lifetime, something not often seen in movies. Usually married couples are bickering and complaining and fighting all the time, right? Biopics are notorious for showing a volatile marriage, especially. We see a lot of newspaper headlines, images, and even video clips from real life events that effectively pull us into the history. Narrating the film from a retired Russian spy, voiced by Jon Voight, was an interesting way to tell the story. I liked it. I've read some reviews where people said, oh, that was hokey, we didn't need that. But it was just a different way of telling the story, and so I thought it was good. I love the relationship the movie showed between Reagan and Tip O'Neill. It was a really good example of how people can still be friends even if they disagree politically. And that is more important now than ever, especially during this current presidential election season. Many years ago, back when I was a legislative assistant for a congressman in Washington, D.C., I met Tip O'Neill and got a huge hug from him, which was a little odd, but also really kind. He was the Speaker of the House at the time, and so I really wanted to meet him just for that alone. And I was impressed. It was a good example to me of the quote, "It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice." Now, this was no, scandalous makeout session or anything like that, but he just was really excited because he knew the congressman I was working for at the time and was a friendly guy and was probably drunk as well. I don't know, but I left with a good impression of him. The film does a good job hitting the highlights of Reagan's life. I love that it pictured a president who completely understood that he was a servant of the people. We've had way too many presidents or politicians in general in this country where they feel like they own us. They actually work for us, we the people. Okay, I don't want to get all political, but I do teach politics at a university, so it's hard for me to not start to go into that mode. We learned that Ronald Reagan's favorite movie of all time was The Sound of Music. Good choice. What is your favorite movie? I'm super curious. Comment down below. That epic moment when Reagan boldly demanded, quote, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," gave me goosebumps in real life, as well as watching it in this movie. Very well done. President Reagan himself, I think, would have loved that. The movie ended with him riding off into the sunset on a horse with his cowboy hat on. It's a bit cheesy, but it was perfect for him. He really was a cowboy, a maverick in many ways. Keep watching during the rolling credits to see more actual footage of President Reagan. Now, there were only a couple of things I could even think of that I didn't like. The first one was some of the de-aging effects on certain characters was a little bit distracting. Sometimes it's done very well in movies, and other times you're like, whoa, I don't know about that. And then some people have complained that the film glosses over any weaknesses or character flaws in Reagan, and I disagree. He even talks about them himself in the movie as well as in real life. He just really was a unique president, and I'm so glad that this film was done about him. Now, whenever I watch movies, I write down funny lines and interesting lines simply so I can share them with you so you can get a taste for the script writing and dialogue in the film. You can see all of them on my written review at moviereviewmom.com, but I'll share a few of them with you right now. So Ronald Reagan was talking about Russian leaders. There's the sequence that shows one after another of the big leaders in Russia were dying. And he says, how can I talk to them if they keep dying on me? Now, this was, the beginning of the Cold War where they needed to have some conversations. I loved his sense of humor. He was quick to make fun at himself, but also others, of course, but to say things kind of with a wink. that it wasn't mean-spirited, I didn't think. One such example of his great sense of humor and quick wit was when he was doing a presidential debate with Walter Mondale. And if you are older, my age or older, then you'll remember this. The line was classic. People were looking at Ronald Reagan as if maybe he's too old to be president, which is ironic because we're now seeing what happens when a president is too old to run for president and dementia starts setting in, among other mysterious things that might be happening with President Biden. But anyway, and so in the debate, the question came up, and I loved Reagan's reply. He said, with a smile, I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience. Now, when you watch the movie, they don't reenact it. You actually get to see a clip, and you can see Mondale, who's laughing because he recognized how clever and witty that was, as opposed to nowadays, there's so much hatred and anger and just spewing, from the opponent's side during these debates. Anyway, love that line. An interesting line is when Ronald Reagan, again, played by Dennis Quaid, says, our destiny is not our fate. It is our choice. And I love that. And we see as he began his acting career, how he was deciding his fate all along, what he wanted to do. And he kept saying in the movie, but also in real life, that he wanted to serve. He didn't want to just retire and sit in a rocking chair. That's just silly. And then I love this line. This is Jane Wyman, who's played by Mina Suvari, his first wife. And she was all about the glamour of Hollywood. At least that's how she was also portrayed. But she was an actress. And in fact, when my mother was younger, she was a nightclub singer, and people often thought she looked like Jane Wyman, which I thought was interesting. But anyway, so Jane Wyman, the wife, says, is there anything worse than an actor with a cause? And she really did not like that he was getting involved in politics. Another interesting line is when Ronald Reagan is starting to date Nancy Reagan. And, he's like, I'm not perfect. And she says, we're all damaged goods, Ronnie. And I thought that was sweet. Another interesting line that Nancy Reagan says to him is, it's really hard to make a difference in this life if you have to do it alone. And he says, I just want to do something good in this world, make a difference, a positive difference. And the one thing that Reagan is really well known for is his fight against communism, which he declared was the biggest threat at the time. And he said, quote, communism is the absolute enemy of freedom. And of course, many will say, well, because he took such a harsh stance on communism, that's what began the Cold War. We get to see kind of the beginnings of that Cold War and how that evolved, which is really interesting in the film. Now, I wanted to recommend 3 films that I instantly thought of as I was watching this movie that I recommend. The first one is called 13 Days. Now, that features the Cuban Missile Crisis and how close we came to nuclear war. And it was fascinating and just thrilling, really, because the tension is high and you're like, oh, even if you know what the history is, it was really well done. Another excellent movie is called Darkest Hour, talking about World War II, and loved that one. It won an Academy Award for the leading actor in that one. And then another one that I really enjoyed is called The Butler, and it shows multiple presidents going through the course of their presidencies, while one particular butler, an African-American butler, served as their butler in the White House, and the different relationships he had with those presidents. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but I really did love it. And I think the first president that we see is John F. Kennedy during the Civil Rights Movement, and then Johnson, and so on. And I forget who the last president was. It might have even been Bush. I can't remember, but it's a great movie. So definitely check that out. Hopefully you'll enjoy this movie. Thanks for sticking around. When you get a minute, go visit me on Instagram, where you can learn about my books, my products, my online courses, and all my other shenanigans. Have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.